Welcome to the Infinite Evolution Podcast, where you'll receive keys and codes to help you unlock your next level of joy, radiance, health, wealth, intuition, embodiment, and soul purpose. This is a space for lightworkers, healers, spiritual entrepreneurs, and anyone who wants to share their soul gifts with the world. We'll be exploring personal, spiritual, and professional growth and ascension through both the esoteric and magical and the tangible and practical. I'm Casey Aileen Knight, coach, mentor, as well as divine channel and soul gift activator. I founded the Luminous Evolution brand to help you elevate your business and beingness and light up the world. So glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful ones. I am so excited for you to hear this conversation. My favorite kind of podcast is actually when two friends are just connecting about fascinating subjects that they're really passionate about, and it almost feels like you are a fly on the wall to the conversation. That is so much more fun to me than hearing someone being interviewed. So I have good news. I have a friend of mine here. Her name is Tracy Montgomery, and she is an Akashic and Ascension guide, an intuitive channel, healer, spiritual mentor, and someone who guides awakening women into these higher realms as they master the magic of their soul. And this is my favorite kind of thing to talk about. And every time Tracy and I have a conversation, I'm always basically going like, oh man, we should have recorded this. I wish like that could have been a podcast episode. So it is finally happening. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me on Infinite Evolution.
Oh, thank you for having me, Casey. I'm so excited to be here. I too love our conversation. So I'm super curious and excited to see where it's going to go today.
Absolutely. And the topics we'll be touching upon are going to be what it is like on a spiritual journey as you are also on your entrepreneurial journey and you're evolving so quickly, you're outgrowing past versions of yourself, and it feels sometimes like you don't know exactly where you're headed, and then you wind up in this place that you never even expected. We're going to talk about the ascension journey. We're going to talk about utilizing your voice as a channel, the discomfort and the beauty that can come through that, and maybe some light language and fun too. So we will allow the conversation to flow where it needs to go, setting the intention that everybody is going to receive some kind of activation from the conversation.
Yeah, I love all of these topics. So I'm so excited to dive in. And I've had a very interesting journey over the last little bit too. So even as you're speaking into that, that completely resonates with me.
Absolutely. You have just stepped into this new role from going from being a healer who worked to help people clear out all of that old density and heal all of those old wounds in really powerful ways. I love your modalities, SIT, and other things that you've brought, your Akashic clearing and healing. But you have recently stepped out of that healer identity and into this identity as an ascension guide. And I am so excited because I know there was a void space between those two places and identities. And that was an uncomfortable place to be for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's fascinating is it would be about a year ago right now that I was at an event with some other healers and entrepreneurs at Funnel Hacking Live. And it was like the second or the third day in, we were in a break, and I just happened to look over at one of them, and literally the words, "I don't want to be a healer anymore," just like fell out of my mouth. It was almost like this out of body experience because I was like, what did I just say? Because it was so unexpected. I hadn't thought of it before, and it literally just fell out. And I remember she was like, "Oh, how does that feel?" And I was like, I don't even, at the time, I was like, I don't even know what that means. And then it's come like full circle, almost an entire year for me to really release that healer identity. Not because I don't do healing work. I believe that healing work is a foundation of the ascension journey, but there's so much more to it than that.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here because
Mhm.
this is the work that I also do. And full disclosure, to anybody listening, Tracy and I have our souls, I feel like, come from a very similar place. Our journeys have so many parallels. The work that we do has so many parallels, and it's just really fun to see the evolution of that. But I have spent the last 3 years going, healing is not the point. Like, healing is not the focus. It is when you need the healing. But when you've done the healing work, there's a whole nother echelon or epoch that you get to step into where you're doing your ascension work, where you're doing your conscious creation, where you're doing all of the activations of your divine gifts. And I personally don't want to help people who are still in the healing phase because that just doesn't feel aligned with my magic and what I'm here to do. And so having you in this with me, it just feels like such a party and a celebration.
It is a party and a celebration. And it's a huge journey. And I think that for me, and this, hopefully this will kind of, be a key or a code for some other people out there that are listening that are entrepreneurs. One of the reasons I think that I almost kind of bumped up or resisted it for a while was that I had spent so much time and so much energy building a healing business, right? Building a healer business, building programs around healing, group programs around healing, having one-on-one sessions with clients that was all around healing. And then what I started to see was in my clients, the ones that came back with, the same thing over and over again, the same pattern, the same loop, or what have you, is that they weren't completing the cycle of healing because they were actually stuck in their healing, which I think is, it's very common. And it's also one of the ways we've really been, taught or led or conditioned, especially in like the old paradigm of what it means to be a healer. And so it's a huge energetic shift. It's also a huge mind shift to really start to step into what else is possible when healing is only one component or one aspect of what you do in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I am all about the transformational journey, as you know, and I love teaching healers how to take people from not just the healing, but like into that next level. Cause so many people get stuck in the loop of
Yeah.
going like, I'm broken, I need to heal. And they never cross the bridge to, I am a conscious creator and I can, continue some healing work, but focus more on what I'm building and what I'm doing versus what I'm healing. And when we can actually bring healers the codes to walk people across that bridge, then people get the results that they actually want. We have to all, I think, drop the identity at some point of needing to be healed to get to the next level.
Yes, or the belief that when I'm complete in my healing journey, then I get to step forward and do the creation, or then I get to shift my vibration or my frequency, right? It's like we've made it so fucking linear that then we actually have created this pattern of being stagnant because we're waiting for one thing to happen so that the other thing can happen instead of actually alchemizing it and bringing it all together and understanding that we can heal as we go and that can happen when it needs to as we step into higher frequencies.
Totally. And people also will avoid stepping into that soul purpose and doing that thing that their soul is calling them to do. And the entire time they're avoiding it because they're not quote unquote ready yet, because they still have healing to do. They are just deepening all of those beliefs and those like neural pathways that say you can't, you're not ready. And so then they never do.
Yeah. And I know you have too. I've had tons of clients who they're healers, but maybe they're still in the closet, right? Or they haven't started their business yet, or they haven't stepped forward because they have some kind of mechanism or belief that they have to get to a certain place in their journey or even to the end of their healing journey before they can start helping someone else. And what they don't realize, and this has been huge for me this year, is that as you move through your ascension journey and you pick up more keys and codes and you evolve even more, your business evolves too.
There is something to be said for being to the place in your healing journey before you help others that you're not going to spew your own issues and traumas
Mhm.
all over someone else. So
For
I want to
sure.
make that clear. It's super important to get to a level of clarity where you're not going to play trauma ping pong with your clients and you're not going to project all over them. But there are a lot of people who are already at that place or close to it who just won't take that next step. And I have a beautiful mentor who will say, you don't have to be a PhD to help somebody that's in kindergarten.
Hmm.
You can
Yeah.
be in grade 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's so many people that will say, like, well, I don't know what my soul purpose or my soul mission is yet. And almost, or well, not almost, but a lot of the time, let's say, what you've already navigated, gone through, and brought to completion is the very thing that you can help your clients with on the other side,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. In
Like,
fact, then you're the embodiment of what it looks like to overcome
yeah.
that. And you've got the codes inside of you to share with them.
Totally. And for me, it's always been really important that I am in my own integrity as a guide, as a healer, whatever, whatever word you want to put around what it is that I do. Right. And so I've always been very careful, not only about what I put on social media, but the things that I bring into my containers, that I never present anything that I haven't, let's say, completed. And what I mean by that is that I don't want to project onto my clients any drama, any story, any energy. So when I'm in healing something, I very rarely actually speak about it with people from the lens of entrepreneurship, because I need to move to the other side of it first so that I can have crystal clear clarity on the lensing that I'm going to present it from, so that it's not coming from drama and it's not coming from wounding or a low vibration or manipulation or any of those other things.
There's an interesting piece of nuance to that because I feel like sometimes we will go through a process of healing and clearing and coming into wholeness, and then we hold that and we can teach on it, but then we'll be initiated into a deeper level of
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is interesting. We'll be initiated into the next level of, oh my gosh, I thought I already cleared this out. So let's give concrete examples because I think you can relate to this. But a lot of people at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey will have a visibility wound, will have wounding around sharing their voice or sharing their magic or owning their power. It could be the witch wound or the light workers persecution complex or throat chakra blocks. Doesn't really matter what it is, but then you can like overcome that. This was my journey. I was so scared to share my magic and I learned how to, and I got very public and I could teach on it. And I could be like, I overcame this, so you can too. Like, let me teach you how to channel, how to own your magic, how to speak into it, how to share light language publicly. I can teach you all of that. And then when I needed to go bigger and learn these lessons in a way more in-depth way, all of a sudden my wounding about being visible came up again. And I was like, oh, there's another layer. Holy crap, I thought I dealt with this. New level, new devil kind of vibes. So I feel comfortable talking about the resistance that I will come to in that next level as I'm teaching about the first level, because I think it gives more wholeness to it. But so I want to just say that you can teach about even if you're hitting another level of it, as long as you have experience coming into completion and then you can fly it in that next level, clearing and healing that you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had many experiences of that where it's like I did the first level, or I mean, not that there's, how many levels is there really, right? But it feels like the first level, right? You do the first level or whatever. And then when the vision is bigger or the visibility is bigger or the capacity is bigger or whatever that is, then all of a sudden it's like you have to level up. You have to have that initiation in order to create that for yourself. Like even a few months ago, back in April, I went to, it's something that I'd been to many, many times before. And, looking back, it was absolutely was an initiation. And it was what felt like kind of the last pieces or the remnants of really unplugging from any persecution, any shame, any blame, any religious indoctrination, any old healer paradigm, any hierarchy that I might have still been allowing to be in play. And yet I'd been working on different stages of that, as you know, for years. And it wasn't until I went through that particular experience and that particular initiation that I was really able to then move into the next level and more into the space of ascension, right? Like it shows up in so many different ways.
Absolutely. And the interesting part is that when you were describing where you were at, you froze for a second. So that was blank. So I guess that part just didn't matter, but it was just a group experience that you had been at many times in the past. And
Yeah.
this is such a potent conversation to have about having really crappy traumatic experiences happening to us as initiations,
Mm-hmm.
as the opportunity for us to level up. And nobody wants to experience that. But when you get to the other side, you're like, oh, that was why. That's why I
Yeah.
went through that.
Totally. And that was part of my journey in terms of I don't want to be a healer anymore, right? It wasn't that I'm never doing healing work or I'm not going to, present that through my work, but it was from that old paradigm of sacrifice and servitude and suffering and power over power hierarchy that I really needed to clear out and to release. And that was my initiation through that.
Mm, yeah, it sucks. It sucks so hard to walk through something that is literally traumatizing in the moment. And when you do, it's like this, yeah, trial by fire or initiation by a fire that will purify all of that old stuff for you, should you choose to allow it to be purified and alchemized instead of just getting stuck in the energy of like, why did this happen to me? This is so unfair. So I loved witnessing you walk through that and also teach from it because a lot of people related really hard.
They did. And truthfully, like I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. And at the same time, I'm so freaking grateful for it now that I'm on the other side because I learned so many things about myself. And there was so much amplification and healing and initiation and invitation for me in all areas of my life, including my business, that came out of it. That would have never happened had I not decided to just show up at that particular time, right? And the way I was able to harmonize my subtle bodies, bring my physical body back online, balance my hormones, it opened up my channel. Like there was so much that came out of that experience that was for me.
I don't know a single spiritual teacher or healer or even like motivational speaker or person we admire who has sailed through life without having any traumatizing experiences that really were
Mhm.
awful in the time of it. Like, I cannot think of a single one because there has to be some kind of hero's journey that brings us the codes, the keys, the resilience, the overcoming and the ability to be an alchemist and turn the shit into gold.
Yeah, absolutely. It really was like, did you ever see the movie? It's super old. I used to watch it when I was a kid. I think it was called Labyrinth with David Bowie.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the woman's name was, Jennifer something. Doesn't matter. But even if you Googled it right now, you'd find like the monumental epic scene in that movie at the end where she like shatters the labyrinth and the illusion of what was going on. And she looks at David Bowie, who is like the villain in the story, right? And she just looks at me, she says, "You have no power over me." And it echoes in the movie. It just goes, power over me, power over me, power over me. And it echoes. That scene in that movie has given me chills still to this day since the first time I saw it. And that was like my labyrinth moment, was that experience.
It's that taking your power back from the external circumstances and deciding they don't define you and that you're not going to suffer from it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the alchemy too, is like something awful can happen and you can either choose to be empowered and be like, this is going to turn me into the next level badass version of myself because of how I handle this, or you can choose to be a victim and suffer
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. It was a total choice point moment. Absolutely. And not even just from the lens of like my own suffering, but also from the lens of, do I choose what I know is true for me, even though it's actually going against the grain of what's happening in this experience in a group? right? There's also that aspect too, is because I had the choice to either, go along with, everybody else and what they were doing and that what they believed in, or I had the option, the choice to choose when I knew that was true for me and it wasn't in alignment with the rest of the group.
Mm. I have lots of chills on that because I feel like it was the initiation again, the micro to the macro of you stepping into being an ascension guide, which is not what the crowd would be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally was. It totally was. Cause that circle, let's say, of people very much were in that 3D paradigm of healing. Right.
Hmm.
And even and subscribing to suffering, like even to the point of the more that I suffer, the more that I heal. And I was like, what?
Infinite loop back, right? Of
Totally.
infinite suffering and infinite healing.
Totally. Totally.
Like on
Yeah.
some level, that's true. Yeah, the more that I suffer, the more opportunity I have to heal. Amazing. What if we didn't have to do it that way? What
Mm-hmm.
if there was a different way entirely and stepping out of that loop into that? And like, I don't even like the word healing, though I do understand it, but it always feels so disempowering to me. I love thinking about it in terms of coming back into wholeness, but
Mm-hmm.
holding sounds dumb.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the word healing anymore either. I think that's part of my aversion to being a quote unquote healer, is because it holds a certain um, frequency, right? It holds a certain ideology, right? That I'm like, I need a different word for this, because it's not like we don't do healing work, but I don't want to call that anymore, right?
Mm. It's a lot of baggage. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that many people, especially those who are healers, will say, well, nobody can actually heal anybody. It's always an invitation for that person to heal and maybe showing them how they can and holding space and all of that. And as much as you might know that, the client doesn't always. And people will often show up without that power inside of them. And they're just saying, help me, heal me, save me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I did that if I'm full transparency, I did that for a while. Right. And that was part of the reclamation in that statement that I don't want to be a healer anymore is, and sometimes you hear healers too. Like I had clients come to me be like, well, I'm not stepping in the closet because I don't want that responsibility. Right. And there's that old energy again, right? Where it's my responsibility to heal this person. Or if they come to a session with me and they're not healed or they don't have a certain experience, then it means that I'm not serving them, or I'm not good at what I do, or I'm not a good enough healer, right? And part of what I've really shifted into when I stepped more into the ascension guide work is I'm providing opportunity, I'm providing an experience for you to activate what is actually already within you, what you already know, even if you don't remember right now, right? And it's through that willingness to receive and to activate it on your own through your own divine trust in self, through your own faith in self, that's when the true magic really happens.
Absolutely. And that's why I've also called myself many, many things, guide, coach, mentor, activator, because I like to just hold space and give people the coding that they can choose to take, and then also ask them really good questions to get them thinking and taking their own power back. I like to teach people how to channel instead of doing it for them and giving them psychic readings, even though I could give people the best fucking psychic reading of their life. Like, I don't want them to rely on me. I want to empower them to do it for them, but still have this experience of co-creation because we're not supposed to do it all by ourselves, right? We're getting rid of that lone wolf paradigm, but we don't want to be leaning on our guides as, codependent on them. We want to be able to meet in that interdependent sovereign way where then we can really rise together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, when you're a healer, that's kind of like it lets you off the hook a little bit too, right? Like you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief because in an entrepreneurial perspective, when you're working with clients, there is responsibility to the client as well. And I think that's part of the thing that we've forgotten too, is that when they come in that state of disempowerment, it's kind of like they're just going like, oh, fix me, do your magic, do whatever, right? And they're relinquishing any accountability and responsibility for themselves completely, right? And there's never any sovereignty or any empowerment in that. Like, I remember when you and I first met, and the reason that I reached out to you is because I was scrolling Facebook in the middle of COVID. It was, I swear, it was like 2 or 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, because all I'd done is do nothing in COVID, right? And I heard your voice, and it was a light language video. I had no idea who you were, even though we live in exactly the same place. Never come across your account before, and reached out to you. And I was like, I don't know what you do or how this works, but I got to work with you, right? And we worked together for a while. And I remember when I came to you, like, I was so entranced by your voice and the light language. And I'd already been exposed to light language. And there was a part of me that was like, I know I can fucking do that. I don't know how I'm going to figure out how to do that, but I knew that I could do it. And if I remember correctly, that was our first, session, like long-term work together. And that was what I wanted to do. I was like, I just want to speak light language. Like, just tell me how. You're like, no, like, guiding me towards myself. And I remember the pivotal moment was we were on a call and you were like, so what do you think would happen if you just like started toning, like just, I know, the chakras and, the sounds, and like, what happens if you just start like toning? And I was like, okay. And in my head, I was like, that's fucking stupid. If it was that easy, it would already be done, kind of thing. Right. And I remember later that week, I was in the shower and I heard your voice in my head, like so clear. You were like, what would happen if you just started toning? So there I am in the shower. I happen to be home alone, feeling a little bit stupid, but I do it anyways. And I start doing my toning. I start from the root. I work my way up, really not paying attention. I'm shaving my legs, like so glamorous at the time. And all of a sudden, I finished all the sounds in the chakras, and all of a sudden, the light language just started pouring through, just like that. Like it literally was that easy. It literally was that easy. And all I had to do was be willing to listen, take the code from you, right? And also claim it for myself. That's it.
So funny, because I have a whole process that I take people through to activate their light language in group workshops, but I was a little stubborn and I was like, no, she already knows how to do this. And so I am not going to baby her with this. I'm going to create the space for you to bring it through, because I could feel your field, and I was like, it's already there. Like, you're already available to it. So I love that story. And I also think I told that story about you hearing my voice and then just being like, who are you, today in a masterclass I was teaching. It's one of my favorite stories because it goes to show so many things, mostly the power of being in your own authentic expression and how magnetic it is. But my favorite thing about you, Tracy, is that you run to the triggers instead of running away from them.
Thank you.
Maybe after a little resistance, but you will not sit in it. You are going to go, okay, whew, all right, what's on the other side of this? Because I think it's something for me.
Yeah. Thank you. You always got to get excited about the triggers.
Right. Well, you don't have to. A lot of people don't, but to do this work, to be so responsible for yourself and to be on a personal evolutionary journey, and then also support others in their evolutionary journey, absolutely you do. And if you're not, then you're in the wrong line of work, because being an entrepreneur and a healer slash activator, guide, coach, mentor is going to bring all of them to you wrapped up in a nice little package and shoved in your face.
Oh my God, yes. And I fully have had that experience. And I know so many other people too. Like, as soon as you say yes to entrepreneurship, all of your shit is going to come up. Like, it's like your fast track to, for lack of a better word, healing in a way, because there's so many things that you have to move through, especially if you're someone who's a solopreneur and doesn't have, a VA or team, or like the learning curve on being an entrepreneur that is outside of what your actual expertise and magic and zone of genius is huge.
In order to be a clear channel for your soul work to flow through you, which is where you're magnetic, you're making the money, you're in the flow, you got to clear out all the crap that's in the way. And I'm let me know if I'm missing anything, but like it's not just one thing either, which is the annoying part. It's like your nervous system's capacity to regulate yourself through these expansions. It's your emotional like reactions and responses to things. It's all of those old traumas. It's the ancestral wounding. It's the Akashic wounding. It's the stuff from the collective that's programmed you in so many ways. Like it's everything.
It is everything. And it's everything about self, right? The identity of self, but then it's everything else outside of that too, right? Like your money shit's going to come up. Your work ethic is going to come up. Your belief in what you have the capacity to do, right? Doing hard things. That's going to come up. Your worthiness is going to come up. Your visibility is going to, like, there's so much. And at the same time, I don't want to scare anybody off because I also want to say it's the best thing that I ever decided to do, even when it's hard.
Yes,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Oh
Even
my
when it's hard.
goodness. Yeah, and I mean, Tracy, you were a former teacher as well, so you were really entrenched in something that is, a profession that also has its own ick and things to
Mhm.
clear. But I know a lot of your journey was about unlearning how you needed to show up as a teacher because
Yeah.
you are still a teacher, just in a much less conventional way.
Yeah, that's definitely part of my template that will always be there is the teaching part. But for me, what I've come to understand, and it even shows up in like my astrological chart and my human design and stuff, is that it's about what I'm teaching that's the big thing, right? That's the key for me. And as long as I stay in the realm of spirituality and more of the unseen world, then I'm doing what I need to be doing kind of idea, right?
Yes, and same because I always wanted to be a teacher, especially, I mean, I had that, prophecy given to me I was going to be a spiritual teacher, and then I forgot about the
Mhm.
spiritual part. And I'm like, I want to be a teacher, but I don't like kids. So maybe I'll be a university professor. And then, almost went that route. And then it was like, oh, wait, those ivory towers are actually not the bastion of intellectual curiosity that I thought they were. And they're really limiting, and you have to fight to get new ideas in and all of these things.
Mhm.
And I had no idea I would wind up teaching first dance and then personal empowerment and then mysticism and then business.
Yep.
But that journey I could not have invented for myself from a human level, but it was following the divine flow and following the next right steps and um, growing into what I am now. Yeah, it's just been such a journey. So I'd love to start talking a little bit about this new venture that you are in, which is, it feels so perfect. It's a natural fit, it's a given. But as an ascension guide, you're talking about the really weird and you could consider it fringe stuff that not everybody's going to agree with. And I will be honest, I work with people and we talk about ascension all the time inside my programs, personal evolution. My brand is evolution, growth, consciousness expansion. But I have always hesitated from just being like, I'm an ascension guide. So I really honor you for just owning that and claiming it, because that is a beautiful thing to be able to yeah, share with the world. What was
Thank
it like? Was there a fear around owning something that isn't as, well understood as like, oh, I'm a healer?
Yeah. There definitely was some fear. And I think that's why the journey, like it was a year. Like I said, since last year, I said, I don't want to be a healer anymore. And once I really realized that, like the next question was, okay, well, if I'm not that, then what the fuck am I? Right. Like there's always that question. And so it definitely took a while to get there. And it wasn't Ascension Guide just kind of dropped in and it dropped in, over the past, I would say like 2 months is when it really came through, especially after or right when I did my micro experience called Ascension Codes. These Ascension Codes just dropped in and were channeled, and I was like, okay, well, let's give it a go and see what happens. And then that's when it really came through that it was really time to shift and to elevate. And I think I'm still maybe like processing, trying it on a little bit. Like it's one thing to type it on your profile on Instagram, right? Or put it on your email signature, but it's another thing to like speak it out loud and claim it. Like I'm an ascension guide. And I also think that ascension means a lot of different things to different people. Right.
Mhm.
And
Tell me,
so
what does it mean to you?
to me, as when we talk about ascension, it's really the understanding that we're moving in a vibrational experience, right? So there's much less tangibility of it from that standpoint, and that healing is a part of the ascension journey or process. It's foundational because you can't move to higher frequencies or, take your quantum leap to the next level if you haven't done any healing work, right? Because we have to clear out some of that density. And I've spent years clearing out density for myself and clearing out density for other people, right? And as we take away the baggage, we could say, or the density, right? We start to have an experience that allows us to vibrate, to access in higher frequencies and in higher dimensions. And it's the understanding that as co-creators, our frequency matters, right? And when we take action, our frequency also matters. That as we know, quantum physics, everything is energy. And so when we talk about ascension, it's not about, that we're going to be on another planet when we have fully ascended, right? We're not moving, we're not going anywhere until we leave this body, right? But it's the understanding that we can operate from different frequencies and different dimensions that not only feel better to us, but that open up brand new possibilities that at some point we can't even imagine.
Mm, I love it. Cheers, ditto. I absolutely love talking about it in terms of frequency
Mm-hmm.
and how it already all exists already. And
Yeah.
it's almost like the taking your consciousness and allowing it to slide through these different frequency bandwidths
Mm-hmm.
to have different experiences, a
Yes.
completely different reality to what a different frequency bandwidth is. And one of the main teachings I have is that in very simple terms, and there is a lot of nuance, but there's a very dense, heavy bandwidth called the frequency of scarcity. And
Mm.
that's where humanity has been playing for a very long time. And in scarcity and separation, like not enoughness, fear, lack, survival, that like all of that heavy, dense stuff is where we've been playing. That's what a lot of people call the 3D. And
Yep.
there's also a massive frequency bandwidth from like, 4 or 5D all the way up, where it's the frequency of abundance, where people can actually feel the lightness that you need to actually connect into all of the possibilities to each other. There's a possibility of unity. There's a possibility of quick movement instead of like slogging through that dense, heavy frequency where everything is a fight. There is flow available in those higher frequency bandwidths. And I think that is a big part of it as well.
Yeah. I love that, the way that you worded that. And I think that one of the biggest transition pieces that we move through is the understanding that it's available, right? That there's something else. And then like you get really tangible. I always vision it. I'm like, it's like getting in the elevator. It's like getting in the elevator and you're on the ground floor. And so then you push 2 or you push 12 or and you go up, right? And you didn't leave the planet, you didn't go anywhere, right? Like you didn't leave, you're still here. There's people on the ground floor, but you're going up the elevator to the second floor, to the 5th floor, and you're having a different experience on that floor. And you can also come back down to the second floor or to the ground floor, right? It really is just about choice. It's about choosing where you want to live and what you want to experience. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, I know that there's kind of this thought out there that, oh, well, then I'll always be happy or everything will always work out, or I'll always be in joy. Or it's not about that, because we have to learn to calibrate to it. We have to learn to integrate it. But the more that we understand it and the more that we start to play in that realm, we create a new baseline for ourselves.
Mm. And I have to say, the higher frequency bandwidths bring you closer to the divine union with source
Mm-hmm.
energy. And there is a hell of a lot more joy and freedom and
Yep.
peace and all of that. Those emotions, those experiences, those feelings are available at those higher bandwidths because they are literally lighter. The other ones that we might not prefer, that people are right now very attached to saying are an essential part of the human experience. And I don't know if I
Yeah.
actually agree. Those heavier feelings of, like, say, suffering and guilt
Yeah.
and shame, they're like, that's all normal. It's part of your spiritual. No, feelings are not having feelings, but like, no, guilt doesn't have to be part of your human experience. Shame doesn't have to be part of your experience.
Yeah.
That kind of thing exists at that frequency bandwidth. And there is the potential to ascend out of those, and it's, you can still have feelings, but the feelings don't collapse you because they're not the heaviest ones, right? It's one thing to have some moments of sadness, frustration, anger, and another to get stuck in, like, the shame, the guilt, the absolute crunchiest ones
Mhm.
that just collapse our energy field.
Yeah, I agree. So let me ask you this question, because I feel like this is a question I used to ask before I got it, before I got like the download, right? And it's also a question that I hear tons of other people always ask too, is that when you have this conversation about ascension and about frequency and how you can shift your frequency of different experiences, people are always like, okay, but how? That's always the question. How?
That is such a beautiful question, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your response too. But for me, when I look at this, it's a three-part process, and I call it evolutionary alchemy. This
Mm-hmm.
is also what I call my energy activation modality, which uses the same three pieces, but basically they apply to anything. It's first you have to transform, transmute, or alchemize the density. And there's lots of actual hows under that. It just basically it's getting the energy to move, be breath work, belief repatterning, movement, dance, crying it out, energy work. There are a million hows, like really at that technical level.
Healing.
And then there's an activation process that has to happen where you create a connection to those higher frequencies and to the divine, to your higher self, soul, God, source, the universe, the great mystery, whatever you're calling it, where you bring that through you, and it also lifts away a lot of the density, and you've basically created enough space in your field to then have that experience. So that removal of the density has to happen first for you to access the higher frequencies, and then in order to stabilize in them and not just touch them, kiss them, and then like drop back down to the heaviness, you have to embody them. And that means actually like becoming that. It's a shift in your identity, it's a shift in your energy field, it's stabilizing in that frequency so it becomes your baseline new normal. And then you are at that normal and you're not going to go back. You might touch to a few frequency bandwidths below and a few above and oscillate there, but you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to go back down to the lowest of the low.
Yeah, I love that. I love
What would
that.
you say
It's
to the how?
very similar as well. Like I feel like, when we're in the healing work, right? Or where we're clearing, releasing, whether you're doing that through modality, your emotional release, letting go of limiting beliefs, like that's where we start, right? Is that we have to absolutely let go of some of the density, because most people, and it's changing now, but like we look at like when I was born, for example, most people were born with that programming and that density, right? And so we've got to remove that. We've got to release those layers, which is why I say that the healing is a foundation of ascension from that lensing. And then through that, once we start to release that, it really is about expanding into our energy field, getting comfortable with our energy field, knowing what our energy field feels like, and then activating new frequencies within ourselves. And there's so many ways we could do that, right? Like we can meditate to do that. We can, listen to other people's activations to do that. We can start to play with our own energy field, learn to manage our energy like a boss, all of those things. And then from there, like you said, the embodiment piece. And I think for me, like, yes, it's the identity work, and it's also, what happens through our actions as well, right? Is that we
Absolutely.
start to take divine action or inspired action. We start to do things differently. We start to see things differently. Like, I know my short answer to this has been, you need to decide that that's what's happening, right? You decide and it is so, right? And so lots of people are like, what? But there's an energy that's behind the decision, right? It's not like, okay, I guess I'll decide because that's what I'm supposed to do, but I don't actually believe it, right? Like there's an interconnection between all of the elements that needs to happen.
Oh, yeah, that aligned action piece is where most people get stuck because they
Yeah.
feel like they just have to meditate on it and activate it and then they will be it. And like, no, to me, embodiment is like you are it, but then also all of your actions have to be aligned with that. And yeah, the
Yeah.
perspective shift, it's just like seeing the world through these new eyes when you come up through into a new frequency. Like even the difference between thinking it's all happening to you versus it's happening for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's just these different ways of experiencing it. And you can, this is why it's like people in different frequency bandwidths are existing in completely different realities, but occupying the same space time. It's happening on Earth where you can be with somebody and the same event happens to you. And they're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Nothing good will ever come of this. Oh my God, it's the worst. And they're just in that energy of it's honestly victim is the short form to it, and then there's other people where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so curious as to how this is going to play out. And there's this openness and possibility. And you're like, it's got to have a lesson for me. It's going to make me more of who I came here to be. And I got this. Like, it's completely different. And you could go so far, like to use the example again, it's very simple and very silly, but of people experiencing a rainy day. It's like, oh no, it's raining again. And Eeyore is just like, why does this always happen to me? And someone else goes, oh my gosh, yay, we needed this rain. Amazing. I love the smell of rain.
Yeah.
It's just a
Yeah.
different perspective on what is and allowing that to really be um, yeah, or thinking about how you perceive things as part of your frequency management, I guess.
Totally. And that, you know what, that's what came through in a lot of the downloaded information when I was doing the Ascension codes process, is it was looking at different perspectives, which I usually in my world, I call them holy shifts. And it's
Mm.
holy HOLY, but then it's also holy as in whole, WHOLEY, right? And so it's looking at things like, for example, trust or truth or action or responsibility in a different lensing than likely the way that we have been programmed or conditioned to look at it as, right? Like, for example, responsibility underneath often has an energetic undertone of obligation,
Yeah.
right?
Instead, that I like to twist it into
Yeah.
what if you just have the ability to respond?
Yeah, that's what I call it too, is response ability, right? And I split it
Mm.
up that way as well, of course, because we're from the same, we do it the same way, of course, right?
I love that.
That, it's not like, we have to live somewhere else, or it's not, or we have to, give up our family. It's not any of those. It's those small frequency shifts in how we view things and how we then, because of how we view it, how we choose to do it, the action that we take, right?
Absolutely. And getting into some of the neuroscience behind it, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but the reticular activator in your
Mhm.
brain is always basically filtering information for you about what is important, and it's almost justifying your reality based upon a what's important to you, but also what you believe, because obviously your beliefs are important. And
Yeah.
it's the part of your brain that will say, when you get pregnant, notice suddenly everyone's pregnant or everyone has a baby or there's all these strollers everywhere. Were there this many babies before?
Yeah.
And there were, but now this is important to you. So your
Yeah.
brain is like, look at all of these. Same thing when you buy never been pregnant, but you buy a certain make or model of a car and
Mhm.
then you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your perspective and your reality. If you are constantly having this belief of like, everyone's out to get me, everybody's a scam artist, people are awful, then your brain is going to pick out every single instance of that and magnify it and be like, look, you are so correct.
Mhm.
Whereas you could do the opposite. And when you start to put in these beliefs and these expectations that serve you at the higher frequencies, like, it's all happening for me, people are actually really amazing. They're so cool. And most people are really kind and good. And I actually run into the most amazing, magical people. Synchronistically, your brain is going to be just showing you the evidence on a platter and being like, you are so correct. Oh my gosh. And that's again how the reality is created, right? Like where people can be in the same space time and experiencing something so different.
Yeah.
And we're seeing so much of that right now, right? Like the polarization of the planet, where you go into any, reel or TikTok or news story, and the people that receive it will be like literally experiencing it in a totally different way, taking something totally different from it. And it's like, what is even happening right now? But it's that perspective and frequency shift.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's all in how you view it, right? That bird's eye view. Like I remember this is a while ago. I remember having a conversation and a client was asking me, well, how do you protect yourself? And I was like, I don't believe in protection. I do lots of energy management and I keep my field clean. That's my responsibility, but I don't believe in protection because if I want to start, whether it's the white bubble or like there's all these different things, right? But if I start doing that, then I have to have the belief that there's something I need to be protected from, and I don't believe that. And because of that, I've never had an experience that I should have protected myself from, or that belief has never wavered because I've never believed that I need to be protected from anything. Do I
Mhm.
sometimes experience heavier, denser energies, or we could even say entities or whatever that is? Sure. But it doesn't mean that I needed to be protected from them. It just means that maybe I wasn't, being tight enough with my field, or wasn't I paying attention, or whatever that might have been for myself.
Mhm. I have a whole technique that replaces shielding that people can just download right now in the free
Hmm.
energy, or sorry, it's called the Free Frequency Upgrade Academy. And there's a practice called the Sprinkle Field I know you've done with me that
Yeah.
is about just shifting your frequency up higher so the ick can't stick. And it's so effective, it's so potent. I agree with you completely. When you are needing to protect yourself, you are saying, I am afraid of what's going to happen. So you're in the
Hmm.
frequency of fear. Now, there was a TikTok that I wound up commenting on because someone was like, you need to protect and shield yourself from the government, and they're trying to take you out, and like just inciting this fear. And I was like, or like that, but there's another way. And someone said, well, that's like, not locking your doors at night and just inviting people in to rob you. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting argument. And I can see how you would think that. But there's this piece where it's not the same when you're talking about your energy. So feeling into that, what is the difference? Because I am all for being prepared and I do lock my doors at night. But mostly so my cats don't push the door open rather than to keep people out. But there are 3D practical realities where, things can happen. And I love the expression that says, trust in God, but tie your camel to the post. We have to be prepared for things and take our own aligned action. But there's just something so different about this frequency energy management where it doesn't feel like the same rule applies.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've never been one to subscribe to those kind of beliefs. Like, I mean, do I lock my doors? Yeah. But am I like checking my doors at the end of the night to make sure they're locked? No, you know? Um, but I feel like when it comes to frequency, I don't know, it is different. And I'm not even sure how to articulate how or why it's different. I feel like if I were to subscribe to a belief system where I need to protect myself all of the time and I need to do all these things to protect myself and white bubble and all of these things, it almost feels to me like it's an open invitation because I'm in the frequency of that heavier density already through believing that I need this protection, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. And for me, the main difference is that when you're protecting yourself energetically, you are
Mhm.
actually cutting off your connection to other people and
Mhm.
to source energy. So that's where I find the difference lies. So I would rather do something like the sparkle field, which by default actually does give you protection again, because you connect to source and earth and you run it through your toroidal fields, you amplify the frequency so that your energy is so high frequency that crap can't get at you. So it
Yeah.
works like a deflector shield, but the intention is not because you're afraid. The intention
Mhm.
is that you are just in this high frequency energy. And I think that the belief and the perspective and the why is so important. And I actually do tell people, if you feel like you are not safe, then absolutely put a shield around you, just like you would lock your door or whatever, right? But we shouldn't operate from that as our baseline. right?
Yeah.
Because it dysregulates the nervous system and puts you into fight or flight when you're saying, I'm not safe, I'm under attack, all these things are out to get me. And most people's problem is that they're living in a fight or flight response
Yeah.
instead of being open and in that rest and digest. And that's why we have all these health problems. That's why we have all of the anxiety and depression. So much of it comes down to nervous system regulation, including your ability to tap into the divine, to be intuitive, to heal yourself. All of that has to happen in that parasympathetic nervous system activation state that cannot happen when you are literally afraid of attack.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you know what else popped into my field as you were saying that I realized for myself is that I don't subscribe to the belief around protection. I do is I have very strong energetic boundaries. And to me, that's a huge difference too. And I don't have boundaries from the place of fear or protection, but rather those boundaries are in place for me so that I can keep my field as clean and clear and expansive as possible. And so those boundaries could be in place with my family. They could be in place when I go out in public, right? Like how many people I've heard this so many times, people will say, well, I'm an empath. So I go out to this public place or I go to the mall or whatever, and it completely takes me out. And to me, number one, we're all empaths. We all have this capacity. Some of us are just more tuned in than others. But to me, that's like a non-negotiable. I'm not willing to go out in public and have that experience. It's a fuck no. So I have the energetic hygiene and the energetic management and the energetic boundaries in place so that I can have the experience that I want to have and that I can show up in a frequency that I want to and leave also in a frequency that I want to.
Mm-hmm. And that's the intention behind it. It's managing your energy versus like, I'm not safe. I don't want to deal with other people's shit because I would like to have this clear and clean field.
Yeah.
And the Free Frequency Upgrade Academy that includes the Sparkle Field is specifically for those situations and people who are self-proclaimed empaths. And that's a whole nother conversation because you're right. It's usually actually a trauma response because everyone is naturally intuitive. They can go and actually go into a mall, go into a grocery store, go to a concert and be like, wow, I don't feel like I took on everybody's energy. And this is what happens when you're at a higher frequency is you don't get energy vampired. You're in overflow. And that's why this ascension work is so freaking important. And I'm so grateful that you are doing all of this to support people in their evolutionary journey, in their ascension, in, of course, that healing and clearing, but so that they can be in the higher frequency and consciously create the reality that they, wish to see. So it's just, oh my gosh, we're going to have another conversation on here because I feel like we have more to say. And also, in the interest of time, I want to just wrap things up. And I know you've got some free gifts, and I'm going to tell everyone how to connect with you. But I would love for you to finish up by just sharing with what would you invite people to do on their ascension journey that is something they could start right away. Like they wouldn't have to wait, they wouldn't have to pay for it. What could someone do today to elevate their frequency?
I think that one of the biggest and, in my experience, most funnest ways to elevate your frequency is to start to invite yourself to think about what else is possible. And it's funny. I even had a client this morning, and it was an entire session around money and money blocks. And I had asked her, okay, well, what are 5 other ways that you could make money without having to take on more clients? Right. And what I notice is often we get very similar answers like, well, maybe I could win the lottery, or maybe I could inherit money, or maybe someone would gift it to me. There's some very common answers. And then part of her soul work was to create a list of at least, I think I actually said 33, which is like a lot. That's what came through channel. But I said, write 30 other ways that you could create money. And she was like, I don't even know. And I was like, yeah. And it's not so much, it's not about the ways, it's about the expansion into the possibility. And I said, even if it feels far-fetched, even if it feels completely unplausible, unrealistic, whatever you want to put on that, just start to sit into the possibility of what could happen. because it's a possibility that will expand us, and it starts to feel fun, and it starts to feel light, and it starts to feel easy.
The fun piece is what is usually missing with all of the soul work. And that is such a great thing. I've had clients do that too. I have also recently had a client have to write 111 things that they would do to have more fun and bring more pleasure into their life.
Oh,
So, like, this is just something that I'm just saying we can also focus on
yeah.
is bringing in that fun and that playfulness because it automatically lifts our frequency into possibility. Think
Yeah.
about how kids show up and they are just, so open to possibilities until people beat that out of them, whether it's physically or just through giving them a reality check and being like, wow, that's not realistic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways I've had from starting to play in the realm of possibility is understanding that when I'm willing to play in the realm of possibility, it it is just so, if that makes sense. It is just so.
Mm. Absolutely. And this is why I love frequency work. I love frequency magic. I love upgrading frequencies because it's in those higher frequencies where everything is possible.
Yeah.
And then there's this piece where I like to go, but we can't do everything all at once, in this one reality, in the infinite reality. Of course we can. So learning how to channel through what is exactly for you and what is your next right step, what's going to create the most abundance and magic for you is also a fun way to bring that out of the massive anything is possible and into something tangible for you. So that is a conversation for another day. Or actually, I think I just recorded it. So check out the Divine Channel podcast because that's where I talk about that piece. And this would be a great companion to that. And this is, yeah, just such a beautiful invitation to everybody to dream bigger because amazing things are possible. And I'm so grateful to you, Tracy, and to all the other healers, teachers, guides, people doing their own soul work who are together increasing the frequency of the planet because it's already happening. It's happened, and there's so much more to go. So thank you for being this beautiful guide and yeah, for guide to the people that are needing some guidance in this beautiful open way instead of needing to do it for them, because that's important too. And I know you have a free gift for people if they want to connect with you. You mentioned you have a free quiz to slay spiritual stagnation and unlock 6 archetypal keys to success, which
Yeah.
sounds so badass. I actually need to go and take this quiz. And I will put that in the show notes below, as well as your places and spaces to connect with her. Find Tracy on Instagram. Find her on her website with all of her beautiful offerings at risewithtracy.com. And is there anywhere else people should look for you?
No, Instagram is usually the very best place, and that's the easiest for people. So that's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I feel like I have shifted a frequency octave because talking about this stuff all lights me up. I love you so much. Thank you. And yeah, anything else that you want to share as a final word of wisdom to the community?
No word of wisdom. I think just, the remembrance of why you're here will be the most potent key that you will ever receive. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share this out to people that need to hear it. Tag us on social media. You can find us at the Luminous Evolution on Instagram. And keep the conversation going by joining my free sacred community, Luminous Evolution, on Facebook, and get a taste of my favorite tools and techniques inside my free Frequency Upgrade Academy. You can also join me inside my membership, mastermind, certification programs, or private coaching to be deeply supported on your evolutionary journey. Make sure to check out the links in the show notes, and cheers to your infinite, luminous evolution.